Last week, I broke down 3 common mistakes that dog owners make every single day. This week, I'm flipping the script because instead of mistakes, I'm giving you 3 game-changing lessons that won't just put you on the right path, they'll send your training into the stratosphere. I've got 7 dogs, and with every new dog that joins me, it feels like the process gets smoother, training clicks faster, and they settle in easier. And life just works. But here's the thing, it's not because I've got some secret talent or magic touch. It's because with every dog, I've learned things that I wish I knew from the start. If I could go back in time and teach these lessons to my younger self, especially with my first dog, Ranger, everything would have been so much easier. But since time machines are expensive, I'm going to save you the trouble and give you these 3 insights now. No gimmicks, no fluff, just simple, practical techniques that barely get talked about and make all the difference. Let's get into it. Point 1, the Kenny Rogers method. You'll get it in a second, don't worry. Imagine this, you walk into a coffee shop, you order your usual, and the barista smiles and says, "This one's on the house." Nice, right? You come back the next day and you pay as normal. A few days later, boom, another free coffee. No pattern, no warning, just a random surprise. Now tell me, are you more or less likely to keep coming back to that coffee shop? Exactly. That little hit of dopamine keeps you hooked, always wondering if today's the day you hit the jackpot. And that, my friend, is why the Kenny Rogers method is about to change the way you train your dog. So I met up with a gambler and we were both too tired to speak. He said, "Son, I waited out of reading people's faces, knowing what the cards are." I don't know the words. Dogs, just like us, are dopamine junkies. They thrive on anticipation. If they know exactly what they're getting every single time, motivation starts to plateau. But if we mix it up, sometimes they get one treat, sometimes a handful, sometimes maybe a game of tug, and then a full-on jackpot. They stay engaged, excited, and eager to keep playing the game. It's the gambler's effect. The same reason people keep pulling that slot machine lever, hoping that this time will be the big win. Now, before you start worrying, no, we're not going to turn your dog into a Las Vegas addict. We're simply using the science of anticipation to work for us instead of against us. So let's head outside and I'll show you exactly how this works, and more importantly, how to avoid the biggest mistake while using it. See you out there. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what we call reward schedules. That's a dog training term for the frequency and variability in which we pay our dog. As I've alluded to in the previous clip, it's important that we vary what we pay our dog with in order to create a gambler's effect. So to create that anticipation, the dog comes back to us or does the thing we're asking them to do. I'm going to demonstrate it with recall today with Kobe, but ultimately it doesn't matter what you're working on. And I want to add variability so he comes back to me in hope of like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to get. There's a couple of components to go into this, but first lesson is I'm occasionally going to add in what we call a jackpot. When I'm first teaching a behavior, Kobe, come. Yes. We want to pay consistently every single time so the dog knows there is some value in that behavior. And then after that, that might be 20 reps, that might be 30 reps until the dog understands the command. And then after that, what we want to add in is the occasional jackpot and the occasional no pay. By no pay, I mean giving the dog something else to do so they don't get paid for that behavior. That should induce some frustration so the dog tries a little bit harder next time. Dogs like us, dopamine junkies. So adding in the occasional jackpot as well is going to create that hope that the dog might get the jackpot that time. They might get paid, they might get nothing. You have to add this into your training over a certain period of time if you want to kick on your reward. So we've got a behavior, that is the recall. We've got a marker, that is YES. And then we've got our reward, that's some kibble in my pocket. Kobe, come. Yes. The command, e.g. come, is the cue. The marker is the, get out of there. There you go, there's jackpot. Kobe isn't one of my dogs. Well, he technically is. He's a foster dog I'm working with at the moment. He's staying with me for a little while. We've done some videos on with him. Good boy. And he's got recall. He's got a sitting down and all the rest of it. We're going to focus on recall today. Like I said, conceptually, it doesn't matter what we're particularly working on. All that matters is the concepts that I'm teaching you guys. Okay, so let's take 10 repetitions. In fact, let's take 5 repetitions. For 3 of the repetitions, I'm just going to pay him 1 piece of kibble. Our flat rate, we're going to call it, is 1 piece of kibble or 1 piece of food. Our jackpot is going to be multiple multiple pieces of food. I'm going to show you how that looks. And then we're going to have a no pay. We're going to give the dog an alternate behavior. When I come around to that, I'll explain why we do that. So I've given him 3 recalls so far, maybe 2, and I paid him 1 piece of food each time. The jackpot is going to be multiple pieces of food, but I'm not going to put in a handful like this. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute and move, because of dogs, conceptually, they understand duration of reward over intensity of reward. What do I mean by that? A jackpot or a handful spread out over 10 seconds is more obvious to the dog that it's a jackpot than just giving him a handful like this. So how that's going to look, Kobe come, he comes in, yes, I deliver my marker, then I move, I'm going to spread some food out in 2 hands. And it's 1 marker for about 6 or 7 handfuls. There's a couple of pieces in there. That was my jackpot. Then we go back to a flat reward schedule or consistent reward schedule. A dog like him is going to really chew your hands up for this food. The second thing I'm adding in, always, is movement. Why do we add in movement? Because movement's reinforcing to dogs. So when I say yes, I move and I pay. I give myself something to chase. So you're very rarely, when I'm rewarding a dog, guess is like pay to the dog. I only do that for our duration marker, which I talked about in last week's video. As you can see, Kobe's absolutely smashing the food from my hand. So if you click the link in the description, there'll be a food guide in order to get your dog crazy over food so you can speed up your training, reinforce more behaviors. You have to do it. Don't just compel your dog into behaviors. Don't just try and correct things out of your dog. We spoke about how that's dangerous last week. Motivation is absolutely key, so I won't talk about that right now. So we've got varying reward schedule. We've got movement in there. And my biggest bugbear as a dog trainer is putting our hand in our pocket before we give our marker. Why is that so important? Well, my hand goes in the pocket, then I say yes. Then what I do is teach the dog, when my hand goes in the pocket, you are about to get rewarded, come to me. What happens is then he sees my hand go in my pocket, and then that triggers the dopamine. I don't want that. The reason I don't want that is so when my dog is in a place command or a duration command, good, I don't want him popping out of that behavior, anticipating movement, more dopamine, and the food because he's seeing my hand go in the pocket. That will be counterintuitive to the other work I need to do away from this. Now, I hope that makes sense. So I should have a means to pay the dog for staying there. I should have a means to saying yes, and the dog popping out of the behavior and then getting the food. Really important. I got 1 really potent, powerful, supercharged marker, and then I got 1 stay where you are room service marker. If my hand goes in my pocket before both of those markers, I blur the lines. Okay, back onto the reward schedule. So I've paid him a couple of times for the recall, flat rate, flat rate, flat rate, jackpot rate, and you saw how that looks like this. And now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to give him a big fat 0. How do we do that? Kobe, come. Good. Down. I give him another behavior. If I allow him straight at liberty, I'm still rewarding the behavior. We can deep dive on this and it can get really complicated. If you want a deeper dive on how to do this sort of thing and understand these more complicated concepts, another link in the description, there will be a free excerpt from one of my recent dog training development weeks where I took 12 dog trainers and 12 dogs or however many dogs, and we worked together throughout the week. I filmed day 1, put all the best highlights in, and it's there for you if you want a deeper understanding of these sorts of concepts. It's completely free. If you go click the link, put your email in, we'll send it over to you. But for now, we're working on a 3 flat rate, 1 no pay, and then 1 jackpot. The no pay has to be another behavior. If I just release him at liberty and give him the break command or okay, good boy, then I'm essentially just rewarding him, but just in a different format. There has to be a couple in there where they don't get rewarded. Over time, we elongate the space between jackpots and we add in more nils. That'll induce more frustration and increase the potency of my reward. So key points are movement for our yes marker, the occasional jackpot. When that jackpot comes really depends on your dog. The flat rate is always 1 piece of kibble like we do for our duration marker that I spoke about in last week's video. And finally, super important bit, before any hands go in pockets and before any movement, we give the yes. Then we move, then the hand goes in the pocket, then we pay the dog. Now, a reward's going to get you 100% of the way? Probably not. You will hit a plateau. This is how you speed things up. And again, this is conceptual for recall. This is conceptual for if you're just trying to redirect your dog's attention to you and make yourself more valuable. This is conceptual for puppies that you just want to be more engaged with you, or a send around who you want to speed up, or we've just started teaching Kobe the tunnel. Come on, bud. Tunnel. And sometimes he goes and fights the tunnel, sometimes he goes through it. Yes. And we're going to jackpot that. 2 hands, remember, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit, and he will take your fingers off. So that created loads of dopamine in your reward-based training. Implement that and you'll see things skyrocket. But the point I was making, it's not going to get you 100% of the way. Sometimes there's a time and a place to compel the dog into a behavior, e.g. you have to do that. And there's a time and a place to tell the dog, hey, you're not allowed to do that. And we do that with corrections, but it comes with a major caveat that I'm going to cover in point number 2. Point number 2, we call it poking the bear. Essentially the right and wrong way to use corrections. Imagine you're trying to put out a fire. If it's a small flame, a quick splash of water does the trick. But if you throw just enough water to make it sizzle without putting it out, you've got a bigger problem. The fire flares up, spreads, and now you're in real trouble. And that's exactly what happens when corrections lack intensity, they're too late, or just unclear. Instead of stopping the behavior, you can inadvertently fuel it. The dog pushes harder, the frustration builds, and now you're dealing with an even bigger mess. And you've likely experienced this with your own dog. On the flip side, if you come in too strong, like blasting a candle with a fire hose, you don't just stop the behavior, you create more panic, confusion, and sometimes even induce fear. The key is getting the intensity, timing just right. Enough to extinguish the behavior cleanly without making things worse. Think of it like a roadblock. A well-timed correction should be a solid road closed sign. It stops the behavior completely. But if your timing or intensity is off, it becomes a speed bump. Your dog just powers through, doubling down on the unwanted behavior to try and push past it. So let's head outside and I'll show you exactly how to apply corrections effectively without poking the bear or accidentally fanning the flames. Let's get up and go again, shall we? Okay, corrections. I've already alluded to it. Our intensity must be right. Last week's video, what did we talk about? Preparing our dog for corrections and making sure essentially we're not putting them in situations that is too hard for them, okay? How our correction needs to look, that depends because there's many different types. I've got a prong here on Kobe now. He's not really had it on much. We don't do too much loose lead walking, but what I want to talk about is our intensity scale. Let's say I've done all of my work to make that fire that I spoke about as small as possible. He is fulfilled. He is in the right state of mind, the right arousal level. He is, yes, motivated over the food I'm going to give him. And I've done everything, but we got those nuisance behaviors that just won't go away. We put our dog in a situation where he might want to pull towards another dog. He might want to bark, lunge, growl. And my reward in that moment is futile. And so what I don't want to happen is create an intermittent reward schedule for my unwanted behavior that can happen. You think about our jackpots in terms of, I tried to stop it, I tried to stop it, I do stop it, I do stop it, I do stop it. However, the little Patterdale over there runs over, he bark, lunges and growls. My rewards fail. He gets to do the behavior, which is rewarding to him, otherwise he wouldn't do it. And then what happens, I'm back to square one. So I reserve my corrections kind of for that moment where things get a little bit hard for the dog. I lose his focus, I lose his attention, he might dip over the edge, and I can use pressure or corrections to bring him into a preferential behavior, perhaps a sit, perhaps a down, or whatever. So a little dog's gonna come over here. Now Kobe's not super reactive, he's just kind of interested in dogs, but I can use him for demonstrative purposes. Let's say I'm giving my yeses, yes, and he's obviously going to respond because he's got really good food drive, right? But let's say he tips over the edge, so the dog gets a little bit too close, or he's struggling, and he's like, hey, barking at this dog is a 6 out of 10. The reward you're giving me is only a 4 out of 10. We're speaking hypothetically here. So then what I need to do is use enough pressure to make sure that I over encumber, might have made up another word, his desire at a 6 out of 10. Where people go wrong. One, they put the dog in situations that are just too difficult for them, and they're at like an 8, and we don't want to be delivering 9s and 10s. In that case, we make things easier for our dog. Or what they do is realize, hey, he needs a 5, and I apply a 4. And that 4, all that's going to do is rile the dog up and push him, who was at a 5, to a 6. Then what do? I come in at a 5. What does that do? It's not enough. Pushes him to a 7. What happens again? I'm at a 6, and we end up chasing tail all the way till he's at a 10, I'm at a 10, we're not happy with each other, so on and so forth. So it's super important, our correction is that the right intensity, and this is for anything, maybe I want to put him into a sit. Sit. 2, because he was distracted then at the dog over there, maybe a 3 out of 10. I come in at 4 out of 10. But like I said last week, you have to prepare your dog for these. So after this video, go and watch that video and then go and watch the blueprint Everything is going to tie together really nicely for you. Look at the links in the bios. They will be a foundational work to make sure you can go through this process. But corrections, we have to use the right tool, we have to use the right timing, the right situation. What we don't want, so dog's distracted over there. Kobe, come. Oh, you clever boy. Yes. Dog's distracted over there, or wherever it needs to be. Other dog, cat, squirrel, bike, ball, whatever it is, we need the correct intensity in order to not push our dog up that scale and chase our tail. Now, for every correction you give your dog, for every behavior you suppress, because that's what it ultimately is, suppression, it potentially creates a void. If that behavior had a function, if your dog was getting fulfilled from that behavior, if your dog was experiencing some sort of enjoyment out of the behavior, and we say, hey, you can't do that, which is totally acceptable, especially if that behavior is dangerous, you will create a void. And so how do we fill that void? We're going to talk about it in part number 3. And so that brings us on to point number 3, the void. This is how you stop playing behavior whack-a-mole. Ever try to quit a bad habit, like snacking at night or scrolling on your phone before bed without replacing it with something else? You don't just stop the habit, you end up pacing around the kitchen or doom scrolling on a different app. That's because when you remove that something that had a function, whether it was relief of boredom, stress relief, or just pure enjoyment, you create a bit of a vacuum. And if you don't fill that vacuum deliberately, your brain will do it for you, usually with another habit just as bad or worse. Dogs are the same. Every behavior they do potentially has a function. Maybe it relieves stress, burns energy, or just feels good. When we correct a behavior, whether it's jumping, barking, or chasing things they shouldn't, we're removing something that they may have found valuable, albeit dangerous. And if we don't replace it with something better, we're playing a never-ending game of behavior whack-a-mole. You stop one issue and another one pops up. So how do we stop this dreaded cycle? Simple. We fill the void before they do. Let's head outside and I'll show you exactly how. Oh, going again. Okay then. Okay, so the void. How do we fill the void? Well, very simply, we do things the dog likes. We think of reactivity in particular, because that's why a lot of you are here. It gives the dog an opportunity to go crazy, to go into 5th gear, to bark, lunge, growl. And for dogs like him, or even your Cavapoo, or even your Cocker Spaniel, it's an opportunity to go into that next level. Now, what you might have found is that you've tried the corrections, you've tried the reward, and you've got a little bit of the way. And one day your dog tips over the edge, barks and lunges at another dog, and everything comes back. And it feels like a bit of that reset button. And that's because we haven't filled the void for the dog. And so what does it mean to fill the void? Well, give your dog constructive things to express that higher state of drive. So we're going to talk about 2 things in particular today. That's going to be play. How do we play with our dog to fill that void, to give them that satiation in losing their heads a little bit? And how do we allow our dog to find other hobbies that can fill that void? Remember, if we say, hey, you can't do that to our dog, we've got to plug in that hole with something else. Otherwise, the dog will plug the hole himself with probably another unwanted behavior. And this is why I see a lot of these robot dogs on Instagram in the before and after videos, which you don't see out of the dogs I've worked this week, him, Lenny last week, because of that void is very much plugged. Those type of dogs that are walking there like that tail between their legs, they're walking to heel and they're on their place bed and there's 49 of them in a group class quivering like this in a downstay. They're ticking time bombs because we've just suppressed, okay? I'm a balanced dog trainer. I use tools, but I don't like to see that because of them unwanted behaviors are just going to come back. And if they don't, your dog's going to live a very unhappy life. So if you got offended by that last bit, then you're part of the problem. What are we going to do with our dogs to fill the void? Well, we've got play. What if your dog doesn't play? Here's some tips if your dog doesn't play. Clean up all the toys in your house. They've probably lost their value as prey, which is what toys are to dogs. It's their opportunity to rehearse hunting. And we can do this with any single dog we bring out of the van. Don't concentrate on the fact that he's a Malinois. Of course, he's going to have a higher prey drive and be easier to play with. But I calculated there's 15 dogs at YCA. Every single one of them will play tug and bring a ball back. And they're all different breeds, from Vizslas to Corsos to Pressers to sausage dogs. Absolutely every dog has a prey drive. It's going to be just harder to tap into some than others. Secondly, stop letting them f*** around in the garden and satiating their own play drive by chasing the squirrels and doing the zoomies and all the rest of it. Go put a leash on the dog. Hey, you're not allowed to do that. Pressure cook things. Create a little bit of boredom in the dog because of ultimately play. Another dirty word coming up is associated with deprivation. How much opportunity does the dog have to essentially around, satiate his own play drive in naughty things? Sometimes we have to say, using corrections, like we talked about in the last video, we have to say to the dog, hey, we're not around anymore. they'll go through a period of boredom, and then we'll say, don't you want to do this instead? And then hopefully we get to the point like, "Ugh!" And hopefully we get to the point like Kobe is, and is like, yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to do that. And so like, he's very easy dog to bring out on the right path of behavioral change, because that void is so easy to plug. If your dog will only play in the house, here's a tip for you. Start playing with your dog in the house. Get really good at the games using the advice I'm about to show you and other play videos that I've made. There's also a play workshop link in the description as well. I am really spoiling you today. So there's loads of links there. Watch those videos to supplement this video, and everything will tie in together, I promise. So if your dog only plays in the house, what are we going to do? We're going to get good at playing in the house, and one day we're not going to just walk outside the house and offer the dog the toy. We're going to open the door, play with the dog, and take the game from inside to outside. Playing in the house, because it's a lot easier to keep our dog's attention instead of gain our dog's attention. So we open the back doors, we open the garden doors. If you've got a driveway or whatever and you're going out onto the street, don't be stupid, but we find somewhere where the dog will play and then transcend that outside, as opposed to just one day outside trying to wave the toy in front of the dog's face. So very, very swiftly, when we bust out that toy, something he shouldn't have constant access to, first thing we're going to do is pretend like he's not allowed it. We're not going to wag it in front of the dog's face and try and push it into his mouth and make play work. Play is play. Over time we can incorporate some work, but at this moment it's opportunity for the dog to let his hair down, to just express that higher state of drive that he is formally expressed through his reactivity. So I'm going to pretend like he's not allowed to have it. And there's some couple of rules. Excuse the heavy breathing. I'll talk you through as we go along. I've done loads of content on this, so check out those videos. But for now, I'll give you some quick tips. Ready? So he's not allowed to have it. He's not allowed to have it. Ha ha ha, good boy, good lad. Now, when the dog has the toy, the aim of the game is to move away from the dog and you become something to catch, right? What do people do though? They chase the dog. And we try and take the toy off him. Now he's pretty good at this, because you can tell we've done a lot of it. Watch your teeth on me. Good boy. But instead we want to become a target. So you see Kobe, he's literally desperate to try and get that toy back in my hand, so we can go back to tugging, good boy, and if he wins it again, I'm gonna go away, and if he comes in, I'm gonna push him off me. Because of it, when we're playing with our dog, there needs to be those physical components to replace the ingredients for the recipe for their reactivity. It can't just be, come here, drop. It can't just be like, throw the ball, good boy, drop it then, drop it, good boy. Like, if you watch two dogs to play together, they fuck each other up. They're going at each other's withers, they're barging each other, they're going to nip at each other. I'm not saying poke your dog in the eye or anything, ha ha, ha ha. But there needs to be an element of physicality. So when he's coming up here, you want only as much as the dog can tolerate. Good boy. Good boy. I'm going to try and beat him, and I probably can't beat him. Drop. Yes. Drop. Yes. And sometimes you'll see me push back on his collar, give him a bit of a tap in the ribs. You know, I'm not trying to actively hurt the dog, but I'm making sure there's a physical component there, so we build enough want and desire in the game where the dog thinks, hey, this is brilliant. So I've got plenty of this out there, plenty of this with dogs that play, plenty of this with dogs that don't play. So there's my bit on play, filling the void. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle is freedom and fulfillment. I've covered this recently with a dog called Athena, so I'm going to play that clip for you now, so I'm not repeating myself, but talking about tools, corrections, fulfillment. Enjoy. I'll see you in the next one. She just shot in there after a rabbit, and now because I have the reliability on her recall, I can say to her, fill your boots. I know she's not going to go anywhere, and then if she leaves my sight, I can say, hey, come back. So this tool is to empower her to do the thing she wanted. Whereas 3 days ago, she goes and chases a squirrel, I need to stop her before she goes, or I need to keep her on lead and be like, I don't have the power to bring you back should you go too far. So then I am limiting the dog's life because of I can't trust that they're able to safely explore their natural desires and have that insurance that when I say, Athena, come, she's going to come back every single time. We must understand that these tools should be to enable your dog. And her being such a nervous, anxious dog that is now, Athena, come, that has now dipped into aggression, just her having the ability to explore, sniff. Dogs are really curious in their nature. So her having the ability to go and check things out, check behind that tree, check behind that hole, and be a dog can do her mental health no ends of good. So we need to stop vilifying these tools because of they're to empower dogs, to give dogs more freedom, and by proxy, if we're treating aggression and things like that. This is why if I get an aggression case, typically the first thing I'm doing, it's not a last resort, first thing I'm doing, conditioning an e-collar. Conditioning the e-collar, because of that, gets me from on a lead to off a lead, being a dog. Look, this is just so good for her. Hey, what's this? Hey, what's that? Whereas before, she stuck to a lead. I wonder what that is. I wonder what that is. I wonder what that is. And she's like a shell of a dog. She doesn't know that there's a big old world out there. And this is what gives dogs confidence. Being able to explore, being able to be a dog. But we obviously have a catch-22. She's trying to fucking eat everything and everyone, or she has the propensity to see something in the distance and fuck off after it. Then obviously it wouldn't be safe for me to let her off. But now we have a very reliable recall. Now the process of re-socializing her and teaching her decent impulse control and teaching her how to feel better around triggers, exponentially easier, because now she gets to be a dog. So these tools shouldn't be vilified. Neither should they be used as a last resort. That would be silly too. Quite often for me, they're a first resort, not to punish the aggression, but to give the dog opportunity to be a dog. Look at her just being a dog. She doesn't get a chance to do this because she has to stay on lead all the time, right? But now she gets to do what Mother Nature intended: explore, dig, forage, run. And if she goes too near the road, Athena, come. I can say, hey, you've gone too far. Go over there, explore over there, right? Super simple. Guys, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, share this video with a friend, and just let us know in the comments if you found it valuable. That's our reinforcement to keep making more. Thanks for watching, and if you want to take your training to the next level, check out this video right here.